In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sales Reddit Stories. I'm Joe, he's Dan, and today we're going to be reading some of the most relatable sales and marketing stories from Reddit. This is a new segment, a part of Live at the Hive, digital marketing from the trenches here at Honeypot Marketing. Dan, how are you today?
I'm good, Joe. I'm good. I've been very excited for this episode ever since we talked about setting this up, since Reddit is probably one of my favorite websites in the world to go visit on a regular basis.
It's a true treasure trove. Anything you want to find on the internet, you'll find on Reddit. Any interest, any genre, it exists.
It's true. It's true. And let's be honest, this is inspired by Smosh's Reading Reddit Stories show with Shane Topp and that crew over there, which is a little bit of a guilty pleasure of mine, and I know your partners as well. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of really good sales and marketing conversation that does happen on Reddit. It's a great place to kind of find stuff. And then obviously you get down into LinkedIn lunatics, which we'll talk a little bit about. But in terms of, the way that everything washes out for B2B sales techniques, marketing stories, it's a treasure trove of information for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you can always find something that'll make you laugh. Something that might even make you cry.
Make you cry.
And today, Dan, I think we're going to be doing a lot of face palming, a lot of relating, and I think at the very end we've got a special treat that'll get us all laughing.
Yeah, and I think we've also got some good stories for salespeople and for marketers about ABM, general sales, all sorts of stuff, and also I think on that outro, what not to do on LinkedIn. Because oftentimes we'll hear, what should I do on LinkedIn? How should I post, whether it's for the company or whether it's for you personally? But these are definitely what not to do. So with that, let's dive right in. I know you got your first pick of the day.
All right, awesome. Our first story, Dan, is coming to us from r/advertising, okay? Here we go.
Let's go.
The client requested a business plan and roadmap for a homegrown end-to-end e-commerce solution. Everything from a website with a secure shipping cart and checkout process to source pick and pack and fulfillment capabilities from multiple warehouses across the country that complemented their existing fulfillment capabilities. Note, this is around 2008, so this is no small feat at the time. Multiple millions of dollars would have changed completely the complexion of our agency with this one project. Spent months prepping, had an airtight solution that was reasonable budget-wise. My boss, who was brilliant, put the entire proposal together using the legwork I'd done. Designed to be about a 2-hour conversation, ticked every box and then some. We were pumped. Day of the presentation comes. 4 of us and 8 clients, including VPs and the CMO and the CTO of this Fortune 500 company. We get 2 pages into the discussion, maybe 3 minutes tops, and the CMO takes his hefty spiral-bound leave behind, throws it down onto the table, and our team stands up. Well, you really missed the mark here. Then he walked out of the room, leaving us all to stare at each other. Later that day, he made a call to our president requesting that my boss, who I will repeat to this day, one of the most brilliant minds I've ever worked with, never be allowed to work on his account again. We found out after the fact that somewhere between the original ask and the meeting, he decided, and told nobody else, that he really wanted was a turnkey storefront where they just sell the product at wholesale and the vendor takes everything from there. Worst meeting ever.
So much to unpack in that. So much to unpack.
So much. Well, first things first. And in 2008, I was barely 10. So, Dan, you were in the marketing world at 2008, so you can speak a bit more to the landscape in e-commerce at this time.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying that you have more experience and that you were doing this in 2008.
That's nice. You, in a roundabout way, you're saying I'm old, which is totally fair, and that's okay. Yeah, in 2008, this was no laughing matter, right? Shopify didn't exist. None of these easy SaaS platforms. In fact, the cloud didn't even really exist at that time either. So, you're looking at a huge tech lift, really, is what it comes down to. So, yeah, it's definitely not what it is today, 100%. But I think there's quite a few stories. I mean, what are you getting out of this one? What are your thoughts on it for first and foremost?
My first thought is that, like, while never to this caliber, I understand this situation where the client makes an ask, you prepare for that ask, you go in, and the client's like, this is not at all what I was asking. And so I just think from an account management standpoint, first, is just it's so important to get aligned and ask the questions.
Yeah.
Even if, and I see this is probably the most common example, a client will come and say, I need SEO, I want SEO. Ask about their goals, ask about what they're looking for, and ask what their current understanding is. Because a lot of people in small businesses, SEO has been thrown around a lot, and it's something that they're told that they need or they think they fully understand. And it's okay if they don't fully understand, or even if they have the understanding wrong, that's what the marketing team is there for. But a lot of the times, in my experience, I've had a lot of people come to me saying, I need SEO, and what they're really looking for is silver bullet inbound leads, which is a whole other conversation, but they're not looking for the same thing that they're telling you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the takeaway that I get from this story is, number one, if you're dealing with a Fortune 500, expect that the people that you're dealing with are corporate people. Like, that is what they are. Their job is to work within a large organization. So it has a completely different dynamic than mid-market and small business. That's kind of thing number one. Then thing number two I'm getting out of this is, and the mistake on Jump Driver, who's the OP or the original poster of this, whoever it was, where they dropped the ball on this was going 2 months or several months prepping without actually circling back and making sure that you're keeping in touch with that person. Mm-hmm. They changed their mind. I can take it from the client standpoint, right? To say it's not my job to update all of the vendors. In a sense, it kind of is if you're doing procurement like that, right? If you got a whole bunch of vendors bidding on a project, well, you can't just change the bounds of the project. That's what RFPs and RFQs are for, right? But if I were to take it from the perspective of that agency or Jump Driver, the original poster, I think one thing that you could have done in this scenario is not wait a couple of months, right? That's a very waterfall method. It's like, well, I talked to you in April, and now we're in July. The entire world could change since then. It doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun to be in a meeting like that. It's got to be embarrassing, stressful, and the guy that was his boss, he's claiming up and down that this guy was brilliant, which is, 100% could well be the case. I think what this comes down to from a sales side is keep in touch with your prospects before you're closing a deal on a regular basis to see that, like, to your point, Joe, like, do they understand what SEO is, And oftentimes it's true, that's like saying I need a carburetor for my car when you go to a mechanic. I don't know what I need, I need the outcome. I need my car to run really well and not break down on me. Can you tell me how to do that? And that's typically what agencies should be asking their clients is like, what do you want as the outcome? And in this case, obviously that changed. Not a pretty situation. But yeah, in terms of that, from a sales perspective, one thing I like to do is to keep in kind of an iterative approach to say, hey, here's where we're thinking of going with this, and maybe just shooting like an outline, not sending, the end client's not preparing the budget, but getting a pulse check on that on a regular basis is a really good idea to avoid that.
I love the analogy that you used with the car and the carburetor. That's a perfect way to explain it.
Yeah, and you know what? It's pretty funny. I think a lot of times, we'll get people coming over to us on the marketing side and in the sales side and telling us what they think they want. From a salesperson's perspective is don't ask your clients, like, do you want SEO? Do you want Google ads? Do you want a brand repositioning? Do you want a content strategy? Because like all of that stuff may work together in concert depending on what the outcome is, right? So you should be asking your clients and your prospects, like, what are you looking to achieve from this? You can sell on pain points and on solutions, but don't sell on the tactic, for sure.
Agreed. All right, Dan, you've got a story for us.
I got one that pretty much everybody in sales and or marketing ever have probably run into, and it's never a good feeling. So I've been an AE at a digital marketing agency for the past 2.5 years. In my first 6 months, I signed a franchise of med spas to handle their organic SEO for their website, local SEO for their 16 locations, and paid Google, paid social media ads. This contract resulted in them spending around $20K per month with us, which in turn grew my bi-weekly paychecks by more than 100%. On Friday, they emailed my team saying they're terminating all contracts, pulling our access to their accounts, and they're pursuing a contract with another agency. Sad music, tear running down face. This was out of the blue with no explanation. They fired their marketing manager who hired us and said they are terminating all business with us by November. I feel like my sales spirit has been completely broken. The account was nearly half of my monthly revenue. It took us months to sign them with us, and it was out of pure luck that they were transferring agencies at the time. I had the biggest account by far in my market, and now it's gone. My goals are going to be unattainable now. My paychecks are going to be a fraction of what they used to be. I feel like I'm going to wash the F out, and eventually my manager will see I'm useless and fire me like they probably should have, since I'm going to be costing the company money now. I'm still shell-shocked from the news yesterday. I can't see any positive outcome from this, and I feel like I should just quit and find something else to waste my time on. That's all I have. That's pretty dark.
That's bleak. That is bleak.
It's extremely bleak, and I think it's a story, plus it's a psychological profile. But what are your thoughts on this one, Joe?
My thoughts is that it's something that you see all the time. You know, like, clients are going to churn. It's going to happen. There are clients that you will form long-term relationships with that, you know, may never leave you. There are clients where you know they're going to churn. And, you know, we've seen it before. I think anyone who has worked in marketing agency life has seen it before. Losing a champion can be detrimental. You have that person who you've worked with closely, understands what you've done, knows what you're doing, and is there to back you up and back up the work that you're doing to the higher ups. And especially in a corporate chain, that can be very, very beneficial, because then someone else comes in, and I put it as a comic book reader. I put it as, it's when somebody new is going to write Batman. You know, Batman is Bruce Wayne. His parents died in Crime Alley. He's Batman now. But then you're going to put your own spin on the mythos. Mm-hmm. Someone new is going to come in and want to put their own spin on the company and leave their footprint right there to make a name for themselves, to show that they've been made. It's the right decision to put them in this higher position, or for them to take over this project.
Yeah.
And so most of the time with marketing, it's, we're going to get a different team that can do more and better and aligns with my vision.
Honestly,
so one of the things
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, one of the things I can say right there in that situation is get in front of that and align with that new person. If your champion is gone, yes, it sucks, but now you have a new person to make your champion.
Yeah. Well, look, this is my biggest pet peeve with marketing managers and in the marketing industry in general. When you start a new position, regardless of what level you're at, CMO, VP, marketing manager, whatever, stop firing all of your vendors and getting brand new vendors. It really is a short-sighted thing. And there's a couple of comments in that Reddit thread that speak to the same thing. It's like every time someone new comes in, they're firing all their vendors and they're getting in so they can, you know, plant their flag, show leadership, they're doing something new. It's a really short-sighted thing for those people to do, but it happens all the time. It is probably the most common thing that I see. So if you're on that side of it, don't. Like, look at the ones that are showing value. Keep your good vendors and make the changes where you need to. I mean, you don't need a carpet bomb when you can snipe, right? And it doesn't prevent you from doing that. I think that's like my first thing. Second thing is, well, there's so many things. I'll be honest. This poor guy or gal, whoever it is, this poor person, understood your sales spirit is completely broken. It happens in every agency, in every sales role. You're going to lose a client. You're either going to lose the bidding process and never get the client, or you're going to have a great client and you're going to lose that client. It does happen all the time. And I think the first thing, and I try to say this to my kids with things like sports, something I used to do back in my sporting days, is you get 15 minutes to cry about it, right? Give yourself 15 minutes, and then you just kind of move forward, because you're not going to change it, right? It's already happening, but you can't wallow in this. Like, this person's going down. I'm completely broken. I'm useless. They're going to fire me. I'm still shell-shocked. I mean, if we had a psychologist on here, taking this apart. I think there's probably some other like confidence issues going on with this person.
I don't disagree with that. But yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. Like, especially in sales, you gotta be hungry and you gotta be ready to jump back on it and go. And just because you've lost this big client, let's say they said 20,000. Let's say you lose this one client at 20,000.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you can't get another $20,000 client. But if your issue is that's a big client, it takes so long to close, then focus on 10 $2,000 or 5 $4,000.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's something I always kind of run through in my brain is the kind of if this then that, right? Like if something's going to happen here, what's going to happen there? And I think you need to take the time to kind of, have the funeral, go through the grieving process, but put a time limit on it and don't let it go for a week, right? You have nowhere to go but forward, and kind of come up with those solutions. In general, I think you're right, Joe. I think the one thing that's really important is if you're in sales or if you're in an entrepreneur or whatever leadership position, you have to always be thinking of if this, then that. What happens if? And kind of have a playbook. You can't cover every scenario, but you can certainly have a playbook where you have a plan. That's one. Two, never take your pipeline for granted in a business or as a salesperson. You can't say, hey, things look good today. I closed a bunch of deals this quarter. I'm going to be great for the next quarter, right? In fact, when things are good is when you should be working on that pipeline even more, right? And fostering those things. You can either grow the business there, but I do see a lot of what happens is this kind of lackadaisical attitude, especially when you've got a whale. Right. So for this person, actually, this client was a whale, call it $250,000 a year. And they rode that wave until the wave dissipated and kind of went its natural course. That's the second thing. I think the third thing and final thing is as a business, you should always have a termination runway, right? Whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, depending on the model, there's all sorts of different ones. There are 12-month contracts with penalties for early termination, and enforce that contract so that you're not waking up one day and having a rug pulled out from under you and it's like, oh my God, I'm not going to make my pipeline next week. I won't be able to make payroll if you're a business owner. Contracts are there for a reason. They were signed for a reason, and they should not be just walked on by a new client. Like maybe that marketing manager has no idea that there is a 90-day termination clause. Well, they can pay it out and fire you and you can walk away. They can get the value for the next 90 days. But certainly if you're in sales, you should be well informed, if you're not, about what the terms are of that thing. And you should really you make sure you make it known. Like I said, so much to unpack inside of this thing. So much. This poor person, though. I hope that they're not like beating themselves up and what is it, flagellating themselves, like whipping themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I never know what that term is, but whatever. Don't beat yourself up.
I just always think about the Da Vinci Code, that scene.
Right, and there was that guy, I read the Da Vinci Code and I saw the movie. There was the one guy, the one character in the book, I know that he was in that sect that like he had barbs in him, so every time he moved it would like stab him, and that was his penance. Yeah, don't be that person. That's the lesson.
Don't be the barb guy from the Da Vinci Code.
Right, yeah.
That's our first piece of merch for this podcast is don't be the barb guy.
Sorry, Tom Hanks. Sorry, Dan Brown. I can't remember the book that well, or the movie. All right, moving right along. Joe, over to your next one.
All right, awesome. This one is from r/marketing Dan, and this is someone talking about their first internship. Okay?
Sounds good.
This was my first internship. I was asked to help make company merchandise, including towels, pens, erasers, mugs, and car air fresheners. Mid-project, 2 distant neurons finally communicated, and I began to wonder why a relatively unknown B2B ship repair company that gets most of its revenue from 2 contractors merch. I went to the CEO and pointed out that the whole marketing team, me, agreed that spending 60,000 euros approximately $64,865.98 on merch that no one will buy is nonsensical. To my amazement, after several months of boxes full of worthless merch sitting in our warehouse, each employee received 3 towels, 2 mugs, 5 pens, and a handful of car air fresheners. When I asked why, the response was, "You see, young man, now every employee will market our company wherever they go." At first, I thought it was genius. But then, the same 2 neurons turned back on and pointed out that our employees are really unlikely to be seen with the merch anywhere in public. Not to mention, even if some get noticed by a big shot manager on a beach with a towel, they won't go back running to their bosses saying, "OMG, this guy I saw on the beach used a towel with a relatively unknown brand fixing pipes on ships really, really well and really, really cheap. We should hire them." Dan, I have so many, but what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, this is a perfect time when the CEO should not be doing this. But all too often, especially this, again, I'm guessing this is a small company, right? Small business? Or is it not really?
B2B ship repair. So I don't really know, honestly.
I mean,
not too much details on it.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say their marketing department is probably pretty small, regardless of the size of the company. I mean, they've obviously got 65K US, so you're looking at 85K, 90K Canadian, more than that actually. Yeah, more like 90. Is a especially the you see young man kind of quote. It sure seems like that CEO was stepping outside of his lane a little bit and trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and then saving face. He's probably a good talker, but yeah, that's a great example of probably the intern is the only person in the marketing department. I've never seen that before. Have you? Never.
The intern is the only one in the marketing department? I was that intern who was the only one in the marketing department when I finished college, my first job.
Right. So it does happen. And the CEO wants to be the smartest guy in the room. Happens all the time. Yeah, that's my initial take on it. That I think is the landscape. How about you?
I think my initial take is it goes back, I think, a few episodes to when we talked about Google Business Profiles, which is know your audience, know what they're looking for, and know what is the best way to appeal to your audience. In that episode, we talked about how if you're a small and local business, if you're doing one thing, it's use Google Business Profile for that visibility. Just like this right here, it's knowing your audience. How are people going to see you? How are they going to know you? How are they going to get the word out? Seems like this is a pretty specific B2B operation with specific targets and decision makers you need to reach. Sounds to me a lot more like account-based marketing is going to be way more effective here than merchandise. Now, it's cool to have merchandise. I've seen lots of B2B companies have merchandise on their on their websites, or it's just something that they hand out at a meeting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Seen that before, and maybe you make a little bit in passive revenue, or it's a really great thing for brand awareness to have. No argument there. But if you think that is what's going to take your business to the next step and elevate it, when like the intern points out, nobody is going to see this, and even if they do, they're going to be on vacation and they're not going to get the information they need from seeing your logo on a towel.
Yeah.
This is a product or service that requires education.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it screams you need ABM. Most of the revenue comes from 2 clients. So there's probably 2 more clients out there that would double the revenue of this business. With 60 grand, we'll call it 90 grand because it sounds better and it's Canadian. If you were going to do that, well, you would then have $45,000 to wine, dine, schmooze, send custom tools or whatever the heck it is that they do. You could find something and do, and that's the whole point of ABM, right? Is like get rid of the merch, get rid of the towels, like because you only have a small number of tiara clients and real key targets that you want to go after, even if they're in the hundreds, and if you're a bigger organization, even if they're in the thousands. If this guy has 2, I mean, think of the things that they could do, right? Mm-hmm. They could send custom tools over to their prospective clients. They could offer a $45,000 discount for the first 12 months. I mean, there you go. That certainly is a door opener in terms of loyalty in those types of spaces. But I think it also comes down to a really important point on this one is the intern is obviously too junior to kind of stand up to the CEO of the company. I don't think the power dynamic could be any further across the spectrum than that, right? You've got what is probably a young intern in school or fresh out of school talking directly to the CEO. So like there's no intimidation there, right? I think one of the tactics that I would use, and I have used in my past with this kind of thing, especially on the agency side, because you do run into this, you certainly do, is a very plainly written, so not a whole lot of like flowery language, not like this is a terrible idea, you shouldn't do this, et cetera, et cetera. I would send it in an email, very matter of factly, like this is my recommendation. You can take it or you cannot take it, but I need to state this clearly. I like using that technique too, which is when someone does something, it's like, I can't argue with you because the power dynamic, you are the person in charge here, right? And quite often, the person in charge is not actually the person in charge. I mean, I work for every one of our clients, right? I'm by far not a boss, right? So you have to convince the recipient of this. And a way to do it is just to say, this is my recommendation. I couldn't be more firm about it, or I couldn't, recommend this more strongly. Here's what I think you should do. Here's why I think that this will not work out well. But ultimately, it's your call. But I have to kind of, it's like being in court. I think it's like for the record, like I have to go on the record as saying this so that, I can wash my hands of this like Pontius Pilate. Like I want nothing to do with this if it tanks.
I've nothing else to add. I think that's a very perfect summary of it.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean, I really do think like when and this really does relate to account-based marketing and to sales, is oftentimes, people talk about merch and they talk about promo stuff, and it's always pens and Post-it notes. And I mean, you go to a conference, right? You're gonna get a whole bag of the same stuff, right?
Branded stress ball.
Yeah, exactly. The branded stress ball, the calculator, the coffee mug, USB, terribly underpowered USB drive, like 3 gigabytes or 2 gigabytes or something. The drill. The reality is that merchandise, like free promo stuff, can work, but you got to really think about it. And please, God, don't give people Post-it notes and pens. Although people do love pens, at least get nice pens, right? Like get something that's memorable. In those things, and really tailor it in ABM. So you could send it directly to your prospect in a wrapped box with a nice thing that they will actually use. It's a way that you can kind of contend with that. So, alrighty, moving right along.
You've got another story for us, Dan?
I've got, I think this is our final story, actually.
Final story.
Final story of the day. We're trying to, last time we said we were going to do a half an hour and we ended up doing an hour. So, we don't want to necessarily do that. Let's see here. Okay. So this one is on the sales side. This one is started a new SDR gig about a month ago selling software development pro services. The SDR function sits under marketing, so my boss has never worked sales in their life. I'm being told to do 100% ABM messaging, since the other SDR was having no success from high volume outreach. Spent about 2 hours making an ABM campaign, only to queue up 7 people, since our target segment is sub 500 million annual recurring revenue. Talking to people is why I like sales. I need to find a way to spend more time on the phone. Even if no one answers, it still feels like I'm getting something done. I feel like a salesman being forced into marketing, sitting and writing, except I have a quota hanging over my head. I have no experience selling ProServe or to start up this small, 15 total headcount. Is ABM really the only way forward? So that's the scenario. Any thoughts right off the top, Joe?
So I think my thought right off the top is that this just screams, and we talked about this in the last episode, the biggest pain point we see with ABM, there isn't an alignment between sales and marketing, and ABM is sales and marketing alignment. If this marketing team should be working with the salesperson to help make that process easier, and the salesperson should be working with the marketing team to help understand the product and their process so they can create an effective strategy together. I think the salesperson also needs to understand the importance of building that personal one-to-one connection with the target account, contact, whoever it is, and how valuable that's going to be. One thing that I've seen a lot in my experience of working with salespeople from across B2B, B2C, wherever, is that when they have a technique that works, they're very resistant to change or to try a new technique. They've got like, nope, I got this. I know I can get someone. We said it last time, you always hear like, if I can just get them on the phone, or if I can just get them in the room,
Face to face, if I can look them in the eye, right? That's a big one. Mm-hmm.
And that's then where it comes to like, okay, maybe, but like face to face, look them in the eye, that's closing the deal. That's your last step. Let's get you there, and we have effective ways to get you there. So I do say this with a little bit of the marketer's lens on, I'll admit, but ultimately it's just the importance of alignment and working together, and not just the marketing team saying, go do ABM, to the salesperson who's never done it before and just has a vague understanding.
Right. So I think that's the first thing you hit the nail on the head is, what is ABM to this person? I don't think they really clearly know, and I don't think that their marketing director knows what it is, because in true ABM, you do not tell a fish to climb a tree, which is exactly what's happening here. You don't take someone that's very good. That's like saying ABM does not include outbound calling. And that's not true. That's not true at all. Account-based marketing does not increase the divide between digital and what you would call traditional sales method. In fact, it merges the two. So why would you take someone that has success with calling, that knows how to call, and say, now don't call? Because we don't call at this point in our funnel. The funnel has to be flexible enough to say, oh, we can accommodate that calling portion of it. And in fact, you'd be crazy to do ABM without any calling whatsoever. Now, should you do cold calling? Where do you do it? How do you do it? There's always a nuance to that. And this poor soul spent 2 hours making an ABM campaign, not sure what it was, probably an email sequence of some sort, and not having any luck with it at all. So the other dynamic here is that they've put the SDRs, the sales development reps, and the BDRs, the business development reps, which are usually really what like that fundamentally comes down to, is they're the call setters for the salespeople. That's their job, is to nurture. Sometimes organizations will put those people under the marketing team, which isn't a bad idea as long as the person running marketing has sales experience or can appreciate what goes into that process, right? Doesn't sound like that's the case here, and it's a huge problem. So, if I were giving this person advice, you're in a small company, your total headcount's only 15, I would just go right to the president and the marketing leader, whoever that is, sit them down and say, look, this is how I'm successful. I can't be successful. It's not going to work, right? Like, this is going to fail for all various reasons. So, like, you could take that approach in this scenario, right? And there's a really great comment here I want to kind of go over too, because some of the comments actually have a lot of really good feedback here. So, wait, I understand this, 7 contacts per leads per day. This ends up averaging out to like 34 unique activities at full volume. That sounds like a part-time job. Or it's multi-threading at the lead stage is necessary, getting into and through to accounts. That's really like, you got to talk to other salespeople here, because that's not enough. You're never going to close. You need more volume than that in order to close that, to get to your sales targets. Like, you're going to be basically staring at the wall. And if you see it's like Thelma and Louise, right? Like, if you know the car is going off the cliff, you could be like Thelma and Louise and go right on over. They do that, right? I got that right? They
do, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you don't want to be rolling towards it, like hoping, like, gee, I hope I can get out, going really slow. If you're going at 2 miles per hour towards the cliff, and the cliff is a couple of miles away, get out of the car. Like, anytime, and figure out the right way to do it. Don't just slowly, that would be really sad just to be sitting in that car slowly going over the edge of that cliff after a year or so of doing that. Mm-hmm. So
100% totally agree. It's, yeah, and we said it before, we'll say it again. The worst people to talk about sales and marketing alignment with are sales
Yes, they typically don't align so well. It's a thing. It's true.
But for ABM to work, it's gotta have that synergy. And just on your point of that's not enough, when we work with clients and we start working with them on ABM, we always say, with your target account list, start it with 100.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have those 100 target accounts, right?
Yeah, and I mean, a couple of things. One, we come at it, and I hate that it's called account-based marketing because it's sales and marketing alignment is what it is, right? So sometimes we meet sales teams and there's some resistance to working on this. Like, oh, you wouldn't know. It is a significant boulder to roll up a hill if it's not phrased and introduced properly, in the sense that we are aligning with the best activities that sales does. So whatever's working for you right now, we want to know what that is, and then we're going to enhance it. We're going to make it better because we're going to take what's working, integrate it into a full flow for the stuff that we know works, and everything's going to get stronger, but it's going to follow what you're doing right now. So yeah, the sales and the marketing alignment, super duper important in terms of how this whole process works. And so the sales teams and the marketing teams are often, and it's often not a la war, right? It's a cold war. It's a war of inertia. It's a war of lack of response. It's a war of lack of engagement. It's a war of a lack of communication. These are problems inside of organizations that organizations constantly need to be aware of, because it's the silent killer, right? It's like, well, no, our sales teams and marketing teams, they don't fight, but they also don't work together. They don't collaborate. And it's very polite, right? It's very friendly. It's very corporately friendly, but it certainly isn't collaborative and moving that thing forward. And that's that internal resistance, that silent killer that really needs to be addressed, specifically by sales leadership and marketing leadership. Like, mom and dad get along, everybody else on the team gets along, and this is how we're going to do it, right? So that's all I have to say.
Sum it
about
up,
that.
if ABM is rolling a boulder up a hill, don't be Sisyphus.
I think that's the second Sisyphus reference you've had this week, or was that last week?
Last 2 weeks.
Last 2
week
weeks
was the first one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've gone about 25 years without a real Sisyphus reference. Just for anyone that is unsure about who Sisyphus is, Joe?
In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is the one that is cursed to roll the boulder up the hill, and once it gets to the top, it will roll back down, and he will forever be forced to complete his task, essentially getting to the height, only to have to restart from the bottom. A modern-day reference of Sisyphus is Darth Maul's complete Star Wars arc from The Phantom Menace to Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, wow. You just nerded out and you had a Star Wars reference in the middle of a sales marketing podcast. Good job.
There you go.
Star Wars Theory would be proud of you, wouldn't he? Yeah, there you go. All right. We have now hit the time, finally, what not to do. Yes, go ahead, Joe.
I want to put it like this, I understand people coming to us and saying, what should I do on LinkedIn? You don't really know what to do. LinkedIn advertising, I feel like they don't even know what they're doing. They're changing the rules every 5 seconds over there. But sometimes it's like what not to do. Okay, maybe you shouldn't post this type of content, or maybe you should structure your content this way. That's what I would think the what not to do's. But sometimes people do things that you think are very obvious what not to do, but they're still doing it. And that's why the subreddit r/LinkedIn lunatics exists. It's a subreddit, Dan, that you actually turned me on to, and it's filled with people posting. Some of it's satire, but most of it, I'd say about 90% of it, is people posting things on LinkedIn that they really shouldn't do. And the only way to really emphasizing at this point across, I think, is to go through some real examples.
Yeah,
some really awesome things we found.
If you're having...
Recently.
Recently. I mean, this stuff is all hot off the presses. None of this is like old. Sometimes you'll find memes and they're a few years old. LinkedIn Lunatics is one of my favorite places. If you're having a bad sales day, go check out LinkedIn Lunatics. If you're frustrated because your LinkedIn post isn't getting any traction, go visit LinkedIn Lunatics. I think the important thing about this, LinkedIn Lunatics is super entertaining. Even the satire is great. The best part is when it's absolutely real. That is the part that makes it even more entertaining. And please, God, don't do these things. In the quest for LinkedIn engagement, people are willing to go to great lengths to do very, very, well, the the thing about common sense is that it's not so common anymore. Isn't that your old man
Funny
phrase?
thing about
Yeah.
common sense is that it's not so common anymore.
Right.
That's what my martial arts teacher used to say to me all the time growing up.
Right. So people are constantly asking us, what should I do on LinkedIn and what shouldn't I do? And I mean, would you do it in real life? Like, if you wouldn't do it in real life, then please, you probably shouldn't do it on LinkedIn. That's the first one. So why don't you kick us off with good old Steve Rigby here?
Yeah, I want to talk about Steve Rigby here. Steve Rigby is a principal at Rigby Associates, and it looks like he's trying to be a thought leader on LinkedIn. We've all been there. You want people to notice and respect your opinion and see you as an expert in the field.
It's true.
And so Steve commented on this video. The video's cropped. We don't really know what the video is, but Steve's comment on the video is, they earn so much, there is never a personal risk. CEO bollocks, I am afraid. I've worked with them. So he's right now making a comment and calling out CEOs and saying that, there's no personal risk for them.
And the first, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
And, so you look at this and you see a comment, and usually, if I'm making a comment and I want to see traction, Dan, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait and see if anyone interacts with it, see if anybody starts discussing it with me, and form a discourse from there. Steve did get a comment back. He got one comment back, and this person is agreeing with Steve. And so you think that would be great for Steve's engagement and for people to see him as a thought leader. Mm-hmm. The only problem is that Steve's comment agreeing with him is from Steve himself 1 minute after making his original comment.
Yeah.
Where Steve Rigby comments tagging Steve Rigby saying, "Great point, Steve."
Good job, Steve.
The comment also has 1 like, which I assume is Steve Rigby liking his own comment. I cannot confirm. I'm going to assume.
The only way to make this better would be for Steve Rigby to fully go into an entire back and forth thread. Have an argument, have a debate, go down that rabbit hole, Steve. Yeah. You've got to have at least one friend. I mean, I think I have one friend, at least. I mean, I've got kids, so that's okay. Get your wife, get your mother, get your cousin, get somebody to even reach out and ask them, can you please throw this comment down? But don't do it yourself. It's not a good look. So
is the one person liking and reposting all your LinkedIn stuff me? Am I your one LinkedIn friend?
Yeah, you might be my one friend, so there's that. and I think I have to pay you for that, so that's good too. All right, moving right along. Yeah. Dennis Hegstad. I'm gonna actually, this is your gem, Joe, so I can give
this is my gem. And so Dan, I'll phrase it to you like this. Dennis Hegstad tweeted essentially a would you rather question. And I think it's an interesting question that we should take a moment and discuss. So Dan, hypothetical here. Mm-hmm. Would you rather, if I could give you one of the following 2 things, which one are you going to take? Would you rather take a $1.2 billion winning lottery ticket or 100,000 LinkedIn followers?
I mean, it's not even a pause, even though I paused. You would obviously take the 1.2 billion for 1.2 billion reasons. But what did Dennis say?
Dennis said he's choosing option B, 100,000 LinkedIn followers every time. He says you should never underestimate the power of having a personal brand online. And I will agree with one thing. Dennis is right. You should never underestimate the power of having a personal brand online. We've seen it happen in many different ways, in many different cultures, what power a brand can have for you. However, I did the math before we sat down, Dan, and 100,000 LinkedIn followers at $1.2 billion is $12,000 per person. I cannot imagine a world where 100,000 people follow you, where you pay $12,000 to have someone follow you, and they make up that value over time. They somehow bring you in new business. They somehow elevate you to this whole new level. I cannot see you spending $12,000 per person and having a positive return on investment on that.
I mean, I guess
LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could treat this like a thought experiment, but I don't think Dennis has really thought through the thought experiment fully, because if you got $1.2 billion in cash, you could easily get yourself 1 million LinkedIn followers simply by taking, I don't know, $250,000, which is a small fraction. So I think also people forget about what a billion is, right? $1,000 million. That is an enormously large amount of money. Not even close. right? So you get $1,200 million. Even if you took 50 of them, of the millions, and solely put it into LinkedIn, I mean, good Lord, you could certainly get 100,000 LinkedIn followers for that. You could certainly have a ghostwritten book. You could have a TV show. You could do all sorts of things. So the thought experiment here falls to pieces. I think the lesson for me in this one is, I mean, don't try to be too friggin' clever. I think Dennis was really trying too hard here. Probably had somebody ghostwrite this and didn't check it. Twitter/X right now is, well, actually, I think we've got an example coming up. I see so many of these, Apple released iOS 18. Here's 9 things you need to know about. Or I watched the Avengers last night, and here's 9 things I learned. It is the most overdone content copy pasta that you could possibly see. Mm-hmm. I think that's possibly what happened here, because I'm a little embarrassed for Dennis, and I hope he doesn't have a professional life to account for on social.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I appreciate you trying to find the lesson in an r/LinkedIn lunatics post. I think that's and to find an actual real lesson is true. Also, that's a valuable skill you've got there, Dan. Thank you. I want to go back to your point of just understanding how much 1.2 billion is and people not realizing. And it reminds me of when I was in high school in math. My math teacher put a line on the board and put one end and one end. He put 0 on the left end and 1 billion on the right end. He gave me the marker. He said, Joe, go mark on the board where you think $1 million is between 0 and 1 billion. And I walked up and I put the line right in the middle. Made sense to me, grade 9 math. I'm like, yeah, it's right in the middle. And then we went through it. And where it actually stands is that it is very, very close, like a centimeter, maybe 2 centimeters away from 0 on this line is where he put the mark for 1 million. Because 0 to 1 million is a lot already.
Yeah.
But then you have to redo that 1,000 times. And that's how you get to a billion.
A billion. Yeah.
A billion is so much. Yeah, it would be but here's the thing. Yeah, I love my job. If I had $1.2 billion, Dan, I'm sorry, I'm not coming into work tomorrow.
I don't blame you. And I don't think I would. I would tell you I won $1 billion. I'll see you in a month, whatever happens. I don't really care. I think that's pretty normal. Yeah, I think on the math side of it, and that's the interesting thing when you see influencers talking, whether it's on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on wherever it is. And even if you say I'm a millionaire because you have a business, you're not a millionaire. Otherwise, I'd be a millionaire, and I'm not a millionaire. But if you have a legitimate millionaire comparing themselves to Elon Musk or Jeffrey Bezos or anybody that's on the billionaires list, right? It's not even a valid comparison. The two are just so wildly off in terms of economies of scale and exponential growth. I think beyond that, I think the takeaway is stop trying to be too clever, right? And beat this one to death. All right, moving on to our next one here. This is a good one. Again, please stop trying to farm engagement on LinkedIn. This is definitely something you should not do. And it was Business Insider, right? Like this guy. So Business Insider, not one of my favorite publications. I think that they do a lot of just anything for the click. But here's the quote. My divorce was the worst job I ever had. Make no mistake, it was an unpaid job with unreasonable hours. So I decided, like any job I've had, to put my divorce in my LinkedIn resume, says Carl Dunn. Good job, Carl.
Can I say something that might just be a hot take that I want to preface? I have no pre-information. I'm making an assumption here.
Okay.
This guy got divorced because he was married to his job and not his wife.
Either that or he was really bad at creating content to try to farm content.
One of the two.
One of the two. Either way, I'm happy for his ex-wife.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You did a good job. I don't even know what to say. Yes, we talk about being witty. We talk about, be creative, be witty, be funny. I can't tell if any of those things are at play here, but it certainly is not in great taste to, and maybe he just hates his ex-wife. Cool. But yeah, I don't really have much else to comment except don't do this.
This
Just
one's
don't.
just funny. This one's for our amusement, honestly.
Yes, this is for
But-
our amusement, and we're going down the route. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something there?
I was just gonna say, Dan, like our last one that we're gonna talk about, which I think is what you're about to segue here, goes back to that trend you were talking about, where people are overusing those content copy pastas, where they're no longer original or creative. They've kind of become a meme at this point. And one
Yeah.
of the most popular ones that we've seen is what this taught me about B2B sales, and people trying to take real life experiences and translate that to B2B sales. One of the most common overused ones is people proposing, taking the event of proposing
Mm-hmm.
and saying what my proposal taught me about B2B sales. And I always find it really weird when they then talk about negotiating. I'm like, why are you negotiating in your proposal, your marriage proposal? I have comments about that. But
There's actually, not to interrupt you, there is a great LinkedIn Lunatics thread about that very thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you found one, Dan, that absolutely, like, I think takes the cake.
Yeah, it's a good one, and if you're watching on YouTube or on the video, you would have seen it already. And just hang on. So, bow-tied cool surf. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to try. My wife got pregnant by another man. It's been a challenging 9 months, knowing he's not only my son. He's not my son, but I'm so excited to raise him like my own. Nice thought. Here's 9 things it taught me about B2B sales. And I wish we had.
I wish we had all 9.
Failed trumpet. Yeah, I wish we could find them. Maybe we will find them for a future episode. In the world of analogies, this is wrong on so many levels. I don't think it taught you anything. Anyways, I don't even know what to say. They're really, I can't tell if this is satire. I am hoping Bowtied Quoll is a satire channel, and this is taking a jab at everybody that posts these 9 things it taught me about something, not just B2B sales, but anything. I got nothing. I got nothing on this except, like, don't be this guy.
You're just airing out your personal laundry for clicks at that point, and the shock factor up at the top, which, I mean, there's so many other ways you can talk about shock factor. People on LinkedIn love a good statistic.
Mm-hmm.
Lead with a shocking statistic. Don't lead with your wife got pregnant.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, just like with anything. I mean, if we're going to take this down a slightly serious road as we wrap up for this episode, is, it's not anything for clicks, because LinkedIn is full of that. There are people that their job is just LinkedIn engagement, and they farm it as much as they can. And the tropes are tired. Well, the content has become a trope, right? A content has become a meme because they've used it, reused it, they've squeezed that lemon a million times, and they just keep doing the same thing. That is not someone to follow, not at all. I think what you need to do is you actually need to find your own voice and provide value to the people that you are intending to be valuable to. And that can be a really small group. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be millions of people. So don't just try to, and I mean, I think on TikTok now, right? It's is it a Gen Alpha, like a Gen X tries to speak Gen Alpha is a bit of a thing for farming engagement, right?
Yeah.
And once is funny, and okay, you do it. I see this real estate agent, I think he's done like 24 of these videos. And he's farming engagement at that point. It's a bit too much, right? Like you've crossed over a line of providing valuable content into really damaging your own brand, looking like an idiot, using these things in the wrong way. And like I said, my hope is that this is actually a jab at that format, this copy pasta format, which is really, like, if you go onto Twitter, my Twitter timeline is just polluted with this stuff. There isn't 9 things that I haven't been taught by. Everything from the Samsung product release to the Apple WWDC to the last episode of House of Dragon. Like, it's just done, and it's ridiculous.
Here's what the last episode of House of Dragon taught me about B2B sales. Bring a dragon with you to get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, here's what the last episode of House of the Dragon taught me about B2B sales is don't give away the climax 3 episodes before the end of the season. Dun, dun, dun. There you go. That's it. That's all. because that's exactly what happened. If you haven't watched House of the Dragon, I think it's 8 episodes. Episode 5 really is the constructive season finale, which is the big battle scene with the dragons. Everything else after that is just talking.
Not in a good way.
No, not in a good way. Honestly, I like the show a lot. It's a vast worlds better than the last few seasons of Game of Thrones. But I mean, I was like, why am I even watching this? I don't even care at this point. These last few episodes, especially the final episode of the season. So, anyways, that's a different rabbit hole.
More of Dan's thoughts. I'm sure there's a pop culture and movie streaming podcast he's been on before to talk about these types of things.
And it would actually be 21st Century Cinema. TF.
Streaming wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right. Search it up.
I hear the host is really good looking.
Search up TFCC, 21st Century Cinema, hosted by Joseph DellaVecchia. And you can hit up the #1 most streamed episode ever of TFCC.
It is
guest
host by Dan Nedelko. Yes, it is true.
For no lack of opinion on popcorn versus cinema. Popcorn film versus cinema. So, anyhow, with that, I think we can do a graceful exit. We said we were going to do 25 minutes. We are now at pretty much an hour again. So
yeah, but if you're here and you're listening, that means you like it.
That's
we found our people. They're okay listening to us blab when we say, hey, we're going to go for 25 minutes, and we go for an hour. Dan, I think you have the same experience as I do, where my wife, I say I'm going to blab for 25 minutes. At 26 minutes, she's like, can we go? People are here, and they're staying for it. I think we're on the right track.
If you think for 1 second I'm inserting myself in a conversation between you and your wife on a recorded podcast that will live on the internet, you got to be insane. Katie's right.
Saying you're a talker like me. I'm assuming you've had a similar experience.
Oh, I have. My wife just zones out. She just zones out. Like I've watched.
She's learned.
I've watched Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope well over 175 times in the almost 20 years we've been together. Every time I turn it on, it's as if she's never seen it before. She is so good at just. She legitimately does not watch it, but it looks like she is watching it, but she's not. She's not absorbing it. So that is a special superpower of hers and hers alone. All right. No, if you're still here, no, that's fantastic and that's great. We do these relatively unscripted, and we're continuing to do these with a focus on sales, marketing, ABM, agency life, sales life, all of those things. So thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for following. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a like, comment, follow us, and give us a star rating review. That stuff is really, it's the lifeblood of podcasts. And we're back, and we're going to be, I think we're every other week now, right, Joe?
That's the goal. We're every other week.
Every other week with another episode, and probably some smaller ones to be inserted, so you can expect a good, consistent flow. And we've seen amazing growth in Live at the Hive digital marketing from the trenches, or it's digital marketing from the trenches live at the Hive. We're a bit schizophrenic on it. We even picked out some really fancy new podcast music that we will be introducing probably in this episode. So, that's it. That's a wrap for this week.
We'll see you guys next time with another exciting episode.
That's it. That's the outro. Boom. Thanks so much. We're signing off. Oh, I think I used to say peas and carrots. No, that was my kids' stream. Anyways, have a great weekend. Have a great week. We'll see you on the next episode of Digital Marketing from the Trenches. Peace.